Well, let me welcome everybody. Let me welcome everybody to this week's Future Trends Forum. My name is Brian Alexander. I'm the forum's creator, host, and chief cat herder, and I'm very, very glad to see all of you here for a splendid guest and a great topic. But before we begin, let me introduce the forum. Let me explain where it comes from, how it works, who supports it, and then we'll begin with this week's guest. So, Christopher, how about the next slide, please? You should know the Future Trends Forum is a discussion-based venue. Our whole idea here is to have conversations between brilliant people thinking about the future of education and technology. This spins out of another project, the Future Trends in Technology and Education Report. The FTTE report is a monthly trends analysis that takes a look at about 86 trends that are reshaping education and technology. In fact, the next report is due out tomorrow. If you haven't seen it, go to ftte.us and you can learn more about it. The FTTE report and the Future Trends Forum are part of a broader project called the Future of Education Observatory. And that's a multimedia, ongoing, participatory, and open way of trying to understand the future of education. This includes a variety of projects, including this forum, including the FTTE report, including a blog, including a book club, which is just starting our next reading selection right now, and still more, even a bookstore. So if you're curious about that, go to futureofeducation.us and you can learn more. Now, we can only do this work with the support of some very generous sponsors, and I'd like to thank three of them. The first I'd like to thank is NYSERDNet from New York State. This is a nonprofit that works closely with New York State's colleges and universities, helping them get on broadband internet and work together. They do terrific work, and we're very grateful to them for their support. We're also grateful to Shindig, because as you can tell, Shindig makes available the technology we're using now. So let me just take a minute to walk you through it so everyone knows where they are. Where I am right now, on the top of the screen, and where this slide is, just for a moment, is called the stage. And the stage is where everybody can see and hear everything that goes on here. This is where our guest is going to be in just a couple of seconds. Now below us is what I think of as the participant swarm. You can see all the icons and silhouettes of different people. I can see, for example, Michael Rowan. I can see a silhouette for John Zendefi. And you can just mouse over and get a sense of who's here and where people are. If you want to have a private conversation with somebody, just double click on their icon. And if they want to talk to you, their microphone and camera are working, then your two icons will click together like Legos. You can have a private audiovisual bubble. A couple other things on the screen. If you don't like the group that you're in right now, these are segmented into rooms. Look on the rightmost edge of your screen. You'll see a teal-colored button with the word More in a chevron. Click that, and you'll pop over to the next room. You can see still more people. Now, I mentioned this is a discussion-based forum. And what I'm doing right now, talking at you, I'm only going to do for a second more. The discussion tools are multiple. Let me show you three of the big ones. Look down the bottom of the screen. You'll see a white strip running along it. On the left edge, there are a few different options, and we just walk you through those. The first one's on the left edge, leftmost edge. It looks like a number. I think it's 86 or 87 right now, with a few different silhouettes of people. If you click on that, up will pop two different boxes. One box will be a view, kind of film strip view of all the participants engaged in this conversation right now. And you can just mouse over them and get more information about them. So I mentioned, for example, John Zendefi, whose name I probably mangled horribly. I'm sorry, John. You can learn that he's an instructional designer at Brown University. Or you can mouse over all kinds of people. Now to the right of that is a chat box. And that lets you just do a text chat with the nearest 18 or so people who come into this room with you. So we often find the text chat is a good way for people to have informal conversation. They'll introduce themselves, they tell jokes, but also they form ideas and comments as the session progresses. And people often will share ideas or URLs there. So the chat box is one good spot. Back to the white strip. Next to the chat box button, you'll see a question mark with a circle around it. If you click that, up will pop a little box that lets you type in a question or a comment that you'd like to share with everybody else. So if you do that, when the time is right, I'll flash this on the screen so everyone can read it. Then I'll read it out loud so everyone can hear it. Now, the best thing is if your microphone is working and your camera is working and you're in a place like I am where you can talk out loud, click the raised hand icon. That tells us that you want to join us on stage. So when the time is right, we'll pop you up on stage, and next to me, next to our guest this week, you'll appear. It's actually quicker to do than it's for me to describe. And we can have up to 4 people here at one time. So you can imagine a kind of panel going on. So using the video, using the ask button, using the chat box, these are all great ways to participate. So as we go, if you have any criticism, if you have any inspiration, if you have examples, if you just simply have basic questions, please feel free. That's what this forum is about. It's about your questions, your discussion. And we're very, very grateful to Shindig for making this forum technology available. We're also grateful to our friends on Patreon. If you haven't seen Patreon, Patreon is a crowdfunding site, kind of like Kickstarter or GoFundMe, and it funds a creative person doing creative work. In which case, it's this work of trying to get the future of education around our heads. So if you take a look at the screen, you can see that there's a whole bunch of people that contribute. And just, we have people like Matthew Henry, Jeannie Kim Han, Paul McConaughey, Christopher Downs, Michael Haggins, Bob Johnson, Colleen Carmine, a whole stack of people, almost 100 right now. People who contribute as little as $1 a month just to keep the system running. We're really grateful to them for their support. And if you haven't been there, go to patreon.com/Brian Alexander. We'd be delighted to have you join their ranks. So that's who supports the forum. That's how the technology works. That's where it comes from. Let me get to this week's guest. I'm really, really excited to have Anant Agarwal. He is professor at MIT and also the founder and CEO of edX, one of the world's leading and most important MOOC platforms. Today, we're going to ask him about the future of MOOCs, the future of online learning, and how on earth he's going to reach his goal of 100 million learners by 2022. Professor Agarwal, welcome.
Thank you. Great to join you, Brian.
Well, we're really grateful for your time. Really grateful to hear you. Listen, I've just introduced you with a couple of titles, and online I've introduced you with tons and tons of links. Let me ask you, how do you introduce yourself when you meet somebody on the street who has no idea who you are? What do you do to explain yourself and what you do?
Well, if someone asks me, what do I do? I say that I'm part of edX. edX is a online learning destination where you can take courses from some of the top universities and institutions in the world like MIT, Harvard, Oxford, IBM, Microsoft, and others. And you can earn some amazing credentials like MicroMasters and even fully online degrees in cutting-edge topics like cybersecurity and AI, robotics, soft skills, social science, and others.
So if someone doesn't know all that and they hear all that, they probably say, it sounds like you're the provost of a massive online university.
So you could think of us that way, but we are quite a bit different from a university. In our case, think of us as a platform that connects together institutions that have great courses and programs and learners that can come in and want to take these programs. So think of us as a platform that connects consumers and producers. So we have 18 million students on our platform. I shouldn't call them students in a way because when we think of students, we think of 18 or 20-year-olds. But we have people all the way from 8 years of age to 95 years of age on our platform that are learning. 18 million of them from every single country in the world. And all of these learners are taking programs like MicroMasters and professional certificates on edX, where for about $1,000, you can earn a radical credential in artificial intelligence or in a topic like cybersecurity. And you can do this from the comfort of your office or your home, completely online. They don't require admissions. These are open admissions with a mouse click. If you go to edX.org, you can sign up for some of these programs and start learning for free.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you. That's a fantastic explanation of edX, especially for someone who's not immediately involved. Friends, let me just say, I have a whole raft of questions to ask Professor Agarwal. I'm sure you do too, so please don't let me hog the mic. Again, use those different buttons to get your questions in. And one thing is, we're going to be covering some interestingly different domains. We're going to be talking about different technologies. We're going to be talking about different classes and academia. So if at any point you feel you have a question that is, what are you talking about? Please ask that question. We're always glad to hear it. I'm so excited to learn about your ambitious goals for 2022, Professor Agarwal. I mean, you're looking at educating 100 million learners. That's a fantastic, almost moonshot target. How are you going to do it over the next 4 years?
Well, we have 18 million learners on our platform today. And, we started just about 6 years ago. And we are a nonprofit. We have made our platform available to the world as open source software. This means that anybody in the world can take our software and launch their own platform. So today, there's edX.org with 18 million students. Similarly, today, there's 1,600 Open edX sites that use Open edX, which is our free platform we've given away to the world for anyone to launch their own learning systems. There's an additional 20 million learners there. Entire nations have adopted our platform to launch national infrastructures for education, like Israel. They've launched campus.il. I was in Russia last week. They launched openedu.ru. There's 20 million additional learners there. So today, we have nearly 40 million learners learning on our platform. And by doing so, we are the largest learning platform in the world today. And from 40 million to 100 million by 2022 is actually not that big a jump. We have been doubling the enrollments on our platform every, I would say, 1 to 2 years. And so 100 million by 2022 may actually be, not such a ambitious number after all when you look at it that way.
That's in sight if we continue the current growth curves.
Yes.
Oh, that's terrific. That's terrific. Well, let me ask a couple of questions about this. I mean, I've been involved in the MOOC world for a while. I'm one of the people who came up with the term. And one of the huge benefits of MOOCs, I think, has always been that they're not very nationalistic, that the majority of people are from multiple nations around the world. That seems like a fantastic affordance for a class, especially now in a world that's more or less fraught with politics and nationalism. How do you keep all this going? How do you keep this based in Cambridge, Massachusetts outfit working at global scale?
That's the power of digital technology. We are a nonprofit. We are based in Kendall Square in Cambridge. We are, we are funded by Harvard and MIT, who founded us, and also several other philanthropists and foundations as a nonprofit. Our university partners also contribute to our cause. And that's how we fund ourselves. We don't raise money from venture capital as a nonprofit. At the same time, we also have a revenue model where we are generating revenue from learners that want credentials on our platform. If they want credentials and some of the advanced assignments and so on, they pay a few $100s, up to $1,500 for a MicroMasters certificate. And so we get revenue from that. We've also launched edX for Business, which is a corporate B2B, business-to-business operation, where many corporations come to us and sign up their employees. So as an example, Tech Mahindra from India is upskilling 117,000 employees in their company using edX programs. And so both business to consumer, business direct to consumer, and business to business are sort of the two of the major approaches that we are using to generate revenue, which we in turn share with our partner institutions. And this is the way that we try to sustain our operations.
Well, you anticipated one of my questions, and I'm going to circle back to that. But we have a video question coming in from Rob Lippincott. Let's see if we can bring Rob up on stage. So this is always this dramatic moment where I would like to have a drum roll or maybe the Star Trek beaming noise. Hello, Rob. Can you hear us okay? Then there's the bandwidth moment where the connection has to work. Maybe the Star Trek beaming noise is best. Oh, I think Rob is changing machines to make sure this works. While he's doing that, let me just ask you a quick question, Anant. It sounds like in many ways edX as a platform that reminds me of your neighbor, the Digital Public Library of America. The DPLA doesn't host content, they host pointers to content hosted by other sites. Is that a fair analogy? Oh, we just lost your audio. I think you're muted. Yeah, you're still muted. You want to unmute yourself or nothing yet?
Unmute, just to be sure.
There we go. Hey, there we go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Beautifully.
So, Brian, can you hear me?
Yes.
Brian, can you hear me? I can hear you perfectly.
Good. So you started talking about DPLA.
Right. So in our case, we have a platform where we actually host the content from our partner institutions directly. And so in that sense, as a platform, you can think about us and try to think of what might be a good analogy. You might be able to think of us like sort of the number of platform companies. Take Amazon, for example. Amazon has a platform for e-commerce. They have consumers like you and me that go to Amazon to buy stuff. And they have a lot of partner companies that sell goods on Amazon from those companies. And Amazon's a platform that forms a plumbing that connects all together. So in that same respect, edX is a platform and the plumbing that brings learners to the platform, creates partnerships with universities and other institutions, helps them create content, and enables an ecosystem that thrives with this kind of a partnership. So in that sense, it is, I would say, a bit different from a site that has links to other possible content.
That's what you mean. Thank you. Thank you. That's a good response. We have a visitor, Jeff Adelson. Hello.
Hi there.
What would you like to ask, Jeff?
So my question, so I do online learning at MathWorks, and so might give you a little of the context for my question. I'm wondering what you see as the role for corporate partners in the development of courses and content, and is that changing, for the future of edX in terms of pursuing additional partners, or basically how do you see the role of like the for-profit entities helping to sponsor, create content, and more courses for your platform?
Good question.
Glad to respond to that. It turns out I live not very far from MathWorks in Natick. I pass by MathWorks all the time on my way to my favorite Chinese restaurants in Framingham. So first of all, great to chat with you. Second, edX works with a number of corporate partners. We have content providers like IBM, who's got some amazing professional certificate programs on deep learning, chatbots, and blockchain on edX. Microsoft, that has programs and professional certifications in data science, machine learning, and other topics on the edX platform. We would love to see content from MathWorks. In fact, MathWorks has integrated MATLAB into the edX platform as a tool. So we have a number of our university partners and others that are using MATLAB on edX as a tool that has been integrated by your own company, MathWorks. At the same time, I would be delighted to have MathWorks create a course or a professional certificate program on edX on MATLAB, for instance. We have some MATLAB courses from some university partners, but I'd love to see one from MathWorks. And so we're actually very closely partnered with a lot of corporates. Excuse me.
Thank you.
Thank you. And welcome, Jeff. If you're new to the forum, by the way, it is that easy to do. People can just beam up, ask a question, and we proceed. Now, we have another question that just came from Rob. Christopher, can you please bring it up, back up on the screen? Rob asks, what kinds of topics work the best in the MOOC format? And, a different question, how do you measure that effectiveness? Great question, Rob.
So by and large, I have not seen too many topics that you're not able to teach in an online digital MOOC format. We have 2,400 courses on edX in topics ranging from computer science and AI to the humanities, history, and the sciences like chemistry and math. But we have writing courses. Excuse me. We have writing courses from UC Berkeley, which is one of our most popular courses. We have courses where you can learn Spanish. Excuse me.
Do you need a minute?
You can learn Spanish from UP Valencia on edX. And so there are a lot of topics that you can learn. We have 2,400 courses. We also have, when you need we need labs. We have virtual labs on edX. I myself teach 3 courses in electronic circuits, where we have integrated a circuits lab on the platform. We have physics labs, circuits labs, chemistry labs, bio labs, all kinds of labs that are integrated in the platform. And so all the way from the sciences to technology to the humanities that you can teach on the platform. We also have a Teams feature in the platform where people can do collaborative work. So maybe the place that we haven't quite figured out is how to teach, how to do sort of hands-on maker-style programs online. But even there, we have a course from UT Austin by Professor Valvano and others, where they're partnered with the TI, and TI provides a kit, and then they teach embedded systems where all the students buy a pretty inexpensive kit all over the world, and they have tens of thousands of people all over the world buying that kit, and then they do hands-on work themselves, but take the course online. So the sky's the limit. And in the future, with the advent of VR and AR, I see the possibilities as truly, truly boundless.
2 quick questions. When you say TI, you mean Texas Instruments, right?
Correct, Texas Instruments.
And when you mentioned the partnering aspect, is that for faculty to team teach a class or for some other function?
So the way edX works is that the learners take courses on our platform, and we partner with institutions, and faculty or team members from the company teach courses on our platform. So we have specialists in deep learning from IBM teaching some of our courses. We have data scientists from Microsoft teaching our courses, and then we have professors from UT Austin teaching math. We have professors from Columbia teaching AI, and so on. And so we partner with institutions, but at the end of the day, specialists within those institutions teach the courses.
Right. Thank you. We have a couple of text questions, and there's one from Rosie Capron, which is, what are some of the biggest challenges that edX is facing right now? Nice big question, Rosie.
Well, yeah, that is a big question. We are a nonprofit startup company, and there's a whole host of challenges that we face. One of the big challenges we face is, really, how do we reach people? Education is a human right, yet there are millions, likely billions of people around the world that don't have access to a quality education. And in the MOOC format, we are able to reach a lot of people all over the world. And as we do that, they can learn all kinds of topics. And with our MicroMasters and professional certificates, people are learning and getting promotions and new jobs. But at the same time, there are other people around the world, and they even have internet connection. So it's not as if they don't. That simply don't know about the possibilities of online learning. They don't know about edX. And so they just type in edX in the search bar, we will pop up. But a lot of people just don't know about these opportunities. There are others that are going to various centers or other companies, and sometimes shelling out tens of thousands of dollars for individual courses when they can learn virtually at just incredibly low costs on edX from some of the top institutions in the world, if they only knew about it. And even though we have 18 million students on our platform and our network is growing as it through the digital connection, still there's large numbers of people that simply don't know about it. So I think one of our biggest challenges is how do you get the word out to people that these amazingly inexpensive opportunities exist? I would say that is probably one of our biggest challenges right now.
That's a great answer, and I think we'll circle back to it before we end today. Great question, Rosie. And Taskeen, welcome. Welcome back to the Featured Trends Forum. It's so good to see you.
Can you hear me fine?
Beautifully. Welcome back.
Thank you. Can I go ahead and ask a question?
You can ask another one.
Great. Yes, Anand, thank you for making time for us today. So just a quick background. I'm from South Africa, and I'm actually doing my research on MOOCs and developing countries and how MOOCs can help the most marginalized in developing countries. And some of the things I've come across in my research, one of them mainly was the partner joining fees from developing countries. So a lot of universities would like to be on the platform, but can't afford the joining fees. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about how someone becomes a producer of MOOCs on the edX platform. And also if you could talk to a bit more about how the US regulations limit which countries have access to edX, because I know there have been some issues and edX has been fighting back on trying to make sure access is given to all countries. So what is what is the case right now with that issue?
So I'll address the second part of your question first, and then I'll go to the first one. On the second one, U.S. law prohibits edX from doing what you might call e-commerce with certain countries. And but these are called embargoed nations. And I think there's a handful, I forget, there's 6 or 7 of them. So by law, we're not allowed to do that, much as we would like to make available our courses to every part of the world. In some parts of the world, we are prohibited from enabling more advanced engineering courses within that country. So we just have to follow US laws. But it's not too many countries. Back to partnering with edX, we've partnered with institutions like Amnesty International, the World Bank, and others, and we have 140 institutional partners. And sometimes what happens is a partner might join us. We do ask for a modest contribution from the partner because if the partner does not have resources to make that contribution to edX, one is I would worry how deep their commitment is. Do they really have a commitment to create courses and so on? All of this does take resources, and edX also invests very heavily in a partnership in training and support and so on. So, and as a nonprofit, we need to find a way to support ourselves. So we have a modest contribution that we request of our partners, and for partners that are in Africa and other places where they can't afford bigger sums, we offer heavy discounts to those partners as well. So if there's interest in joining us, please reach out and let us know. Send me an email if you're interested in joining us, and we'll see what we can do. A second approach is that sometimes many partners will join together and form a small consortium and join as a group. So in this manner, several universities in Russia, for example, joined together as a group on edX. The same thing with Israel. The nation of Israel joined edX as a partner, and they bring in and consolidated courses from many of the Israeli universities. So there's many second way to do that. The third way, of course, is that we have made our platform available to the world as open source, free. So anybody can take the edX open source platform and launch their own site. And as I said, today there are 1,600 such sites that use OpenEdX today, including entire countries who've launched OpenEdX platforms: France, Israel, Russia, China, Saudi, Jordan. The list goes on and on. And so there's many ways in which people can take advantage of our platform. But of course, reach out to us and we'll see how we can help.
Yeah. Just a quick follow-up on that last point. If you use Open edX, is the information still stored on US servers, or is it then stored on that country's specific servers?
Again, I see all examples. You can get open source edX software through GitHub. You can go to Bitnami, and through Bitnami, it runs on Amazon. In that case, the data is on US servers, but many countries are hosting it themselves. So, for example, in India, IIT Bombay hosts an open edX instance called IIT Bombay X, and there I've actually seen the computer room where they have all the servers that are hosting the platform and the data locally in Mumbai. And so different countries in China, the data and platform are hosted locally in Beijing by Shuetang X. And so in other cases, people host on Amazon. It is simply easier to host on Amazon, but you can also host it on a local server. It is just a little bit harder to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Taskin. By the way, Taskin was a great guest in June 2017. I just put the link to the recording in our chat box. She had a wonderful conversation about colonialism, decolonialization, and teaching online. And Anand, it really sounds like we have your open platform in the sense of being able to download and install locally is a huge advantage.
That's right. There's not only individuals who do it. Many universities have done it. Many countries have done it, and there's all kinds of ways of doing it. You can do it yourself. Now there are also a lot of companies that, for example, there's a company called there's IBL Studios, there's OpenCraft, there's an Open edX conference that happens every year, where there might be several hundred companies that come that can also host the platform for you for a small fee. So there's many approaches
Nice.
to do so.
Nice. Thank you. Before I go further, we have a question here from John Gould. Hello, John.
Hey, how are you? I must say I do enjoy using edX in my doctoral classes. I use Otto Scharmer's work, which is quite a powerful MOOC in terms of things I'm teaching. What I'm curious about is, how do you see edX basically transforming the structure of higher ed down the road? And what I'm talking about is, as I think about the magnitude of your platform, ability to make education and certificates in the realm of costs for anyone to be able to do that, and with the return on investment, particularly in the United States, of whether a college degree really is what people should be going at. Just curious about what you see going on there, and what are the conflicts that might emerge because of that, because I really see it transforming the fundamental structure of higher ed right now.
So, first of all, I think there's a couple of questions there. One is, what's going to happen to degrees and credentials in the future? We are seeing more and more that learning is going to become lifelong, which means that rather than going to university for 4 years at the age of 18, you are going to be learning throughout life as newer and newer fields and newer jobs pop up, where for example, from driving trucks, once self-driving trucks pop up on the horizon, maybe there'll be IT support jobs for trucks. I mean, who knows? So there are all kinds of new jobs that are going to pop up, and people will need to become lifelong learners. And for lifelong learners, it's going to be very hard to come back to university for a new bachelor's or a second bachelor's or a second or a first master's degree when they're 30 or 35 years old. It's very hard to do that. Instead, they're looking for shorter, smaller credentials with value. And so to that end, edX has launched new credentials like professional certificates or micromasters, where micromasters are about 25% of a master's degree, and can be done completely online. And we're seeing increasing popularity of more and more of these smaller lifelong credentials than the expensive traditional degrees. And a MicroMasters might cost you about $1,000. Well, a degree might cost you, in the U.S. at least, anywhere from $20,000 to $1,000 to $100,000. So I think credentials are going to become more modular to support lifelong learning. In terms of how the evolution of the university is going to happen, one of the missions of edX is to work with our partner institutions and reimagine how education will look like in the future, including helping to reimagine what the university will look like. And I believe that the university of the future will look very different than the university of today. Universities will be around, but they will look quite a bit different. I believe education will become more modular, where universities will offer more modular programs to engage with their alumni throughout life, as opposed to just full master's degrees. They'll offer modular programs like MicroMasters and professional certificates, as they do on edX today. I think that education will become omni-channel, where today you go to a university, it's all classroom-based, place-based education. Omni-channel education means that you will have both in-person education and online education. And in the future,
Yeah, I was just wondering, as you talk about that, and I'm a former superintendent of schools, so I'm looking at the K-12, and you're talking about lifelong learning. Do you see a platform emerging for the K-12 environment that it's almost that let's say a young child, and as they're growing up, buy subscriptions to learning throughout their entire lifetime, and that it radically changes what K-12 might look like and also what higher ed is. It's almost like I always laugh about, I belong to, the Wall Street Journal Wine Club, so I can select whatever I want as I'm going through in my taste. And it's almost like your platforms gives the possibility, as I train my students to rethink the design of all learning throughout a lifetime, that possibility is there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have blogged about this extensively, where I talk about education becoming lifelong, where universities, but certainly at the college level, and I'll get to high schools in a second, but certainly the college level, I expect that instead of counting students as their clients for 4 years, I think universities will take a longer term approach and count them as their customers, so to speak, for life. And the edX platform is very suited to something like that, where when they come into a university, they engage with the university and edX and go omni-channel and take in-person classes and online classes on campus. At the same time, when they graduate, they can continue getting a subscription and continuing learning from that university or other universities and learning to obtain new micro-credentials throughout their life. So I think education will become sort of a continuous engagement process throughout life. You bring up an intriguing question. I do believe that this will extend all the way from birth to the end of life. You'll be learning throughout life. And is there a single platform that does it? I don't know, but I certainly think that the concept is clear, that you will be engaged online and in person at every stage of your education, whether it's in schools or in college. On edX today, we already have more than 100 high school level courses. We have algebra, geometry courses on edX for 6th and 7th graders. We have a couple dozen high school AP courses that people can take, and any tens of thousands of students are taking these AP courses on edX, and in many cases, those are not offered in the high schools. They take this course on edX and then sit for the AP exam from College Board. And so we are having an impact at the high school level already, but I can see a lot more of that. I think all the way from birth to your final, to your final breath, I think you will be learning in person and online in the future.
Truly lifelong learning.
Yes,
Thank you for
absolutely.
the question, John. We had a follow-up question from Andy Q, who asks about the possibility of MOOCs replacing traditional universities in the long run. It seems that what you're saying is that won't replace universities so much as expand them or supplement what's available through universities.
I think the best way to look at it is transform them. And I think tomorrow's university will look nothing like today's university. A university 20 or 50 years from now may not have a whole bunch of, I've been joking, I think they'll need just one classroom 50 years from now. And that classroom will be there more as a museum to show students, hey, you know what? In the 20th century, this is where we huddled all the students and taught them. And this used to be the case in the 20th century. But in the middle of the 21st century, I think people will be getting together in groups and coffee shops and learning online and doing maker-based projects. And I think universities will be a lot less like regimented classrooms, but much more happening, team-based, maker-based places. And whatever can be taught online, and most of the stuff that you teach in lectures, you can teach online. And so all of that will go online. For me, waking up at 8 o'clock in the morning to go to a lecture was probably the worst experiences of my life. On edX, on edX, most of the videos are watched between midnight and 2 a.m. So why do we drag students to the classroom at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning? I mean, it's they don't want to study at that time. So I think that universities will look completely different in the future. And frankly, those universities that don't get with the program, that don't digitally transform themselves, I honestly do believe will go the way of the stagecoach when the steam engine came about.
Well, that's a great answer to a very powerful question. We have another question, actually, that reaches back to something you mentioned a few minutes ago from Kelvin Bentley, who asks, how are the MOOC efforts at edX around MicroMasters different from the other MOOC providers like those we get from Coursera and Udacity?
So I think there are quite a bit of differences. First of all, edX is a nonprofit. We are the only nonprofit MOOC provider. As I said, we are the largest platform in the world today, and we have more learners on the platform than anybody else, any other provider. We have over 38 million on the software platform. At the same time, I said we are nonprofit. We also partner with some of the top institutions in the world, like MIT, Harvard, Oxford, and others, and they are creating unique courses on edX. I think we're unique in that respect. I also think that some of our credentials are radically new and disruptive. MicroMasters are unique to edX. You won't find MicroMasters elsewhere. edX launched it, and edX partner universities offer MicroMasters on edX, and so those are unique to our platform. We also offer courses in just a huge range of topics, all the way from, as I said, social work to education to AI and computer science. And so there's quite a bit of differentiation between us and the other MOOC platforms.
Okay. Well, that nonprofit difference is a very, very large one.
That's a really big one.
Yeah. We're down to about 13 minutes. So if you have your questions, this is a great time to get them towards us. And we have one from David Hooker. All the commercial LMS solutions are working on learning analytics, dashboards from the data generated by students. Where do you see the greatest potential value within this data going forward? Good question, David.
I think one of the big values of digital education is that we get access to all this data and can make available the data to the instructors and others to do analytics and do retention and all kinds of cool things. The edX platform has a dashboard called edX Insights. And Insights is a data dashboard that shows the instructor how all the students are doing in real time. Just imagine being able to, you can't do that on campus because you don't have a real-time view of how the students are learning. And here you get completely real-time insights on how the students are doing on this analytics dashboard. And there's so much more that can be done, and we are just scratching the surface of what is possible.
What have you, I mean, this is a huge question, but if I could build on David's, what are some of the highlights of what you have learned from students working through edX classes? I mean, you just mentioned one, that they tend to listen to and watch lectures from midnight to 2 a.m. Are there any other really interesting findings that you've come across with all that data?
There's any number of findings. I think I'll mention a couple very quickly. One is, we are using the data and the big data of, I call it the big data of learning, to gain insights into what works well. And, Professor Philip Guo, who was a researcher at edX 6 years ago, did a study using millions of edX videos, and he was able to demonstrate that 6-minute videos yielded maximum engagement from students. Not 1 hour lectures, but 6-minute videos. And that was a remarkable study. And today, 6 minutes has begun to be encoded into kind of the learning ethos everywhere. That's one example. I think other examples include studies that show that active learning simply provides better outcomes than watching videos alone. So on edX, the pedagogy of the platform is active learning, where we interleave videos and interactive exercises. You watch a video, you do an interactive exercise, and so on. And that kind of active learning simply yields better learning outcomes than watching videos alone, for instance. And there's been any number of studies that have shown this. Now, active learning has been around for 30, 40 years, the concept. Right. We're just getting a lot of data now that shows this with a little semblance of doubt.
Excellent. Well, thank you. This sounds like a gold mine for all educators. And speaking of all educators, we now have the wonderful friend of the forum, Roxanne Riskin. Hello, Roxanne. I think you're muted.
Sorry. Hi.
There you go. Hi.
I participated in MOOC since they've been around. And that was the first one I participated with was on Coursera. And I'm a very fond advocate of MOOCs. However, my question is going to be, will universities appreciate the value of students taking the MOOC by showing the reflection on a transcript at any point in the future?
That is happening it's already happened. We have a significant number of courses on edX where if you pass, you get your grade on a transcript. So for example, we have a number of courses offered by Arizona State University on edX, where in a program that we call Global Freshman Academy, if you complete those courses, you can get on edX, you can get that grade on an ASU transcript. You don't have to be admitted. You can get the grade on a transcript by paying a fee after you pass. So that is pretty radical. We have a number of other courses from MIT and Berkeley and others where if you complete them and pass, you can get credit for those courses on one of our partner university transcripts like Charter Oak and others. There's many such examples. On MicroMasters, we have 51 MicroMasters on edX. If you complete a MicroMasters and you get admission to the university, you get credit for the courses that you've completed in the MicroMasters. And so we have hundreds of courses on our platform that offer credit pathways very inexpensively.
Thank you. Thanks,
That's
Brian.
a great question, Roxanne. And that's really good to see this progress. I've got to kind of bridge the future with the past here for a moment. I mean, one of the questions that people always ask around MOOCs is, what happened? There was the huge hype bubble, 2011 to 2012, and then it seemed like a big hype crash in Gartner terms. That there wasn't, there was a kind of after all that excitement, and yet MOOCs keep being offered. I mean, we had Dewal Shaw from Course Central, who showed the number of students taking MOOC kept growing, and the number of MOOC classes keeps growing. We know that we have MOOCs being offered all around the world from all kinds of different providers, including national governments, from France to China. So what's it like? I mean, a half decade past the big bubble. How do you keep going? What's the story there?
So I think the hype comes and goes by its very nature. Hype usually lasts 1 or 2 years. There are a few things where the hype has lasted a lot longer than that. But once the hype cycle kind of dies down, the real troopers get active, and then you see the real progress. And
Productivity.
certainly for edX, today we have more learners starting on the new learners registering on our platform per week than at any time in our history. We've doubled the number of courses that we offer over the past year. We launched MicroMasters 2 years ago. We launched professional certificates last year, and we're now offering online master's degrees. And so innovation continues. Last year, our partners Georgia Tech and MIT both offered edX courses to their campus students for online credit. So we are seeing a number of radical innovations. And frankly, after the hype died away, the real soldiers, the real troopers, could continue to work and be innovating, without the kind of hype cloud overshadowing everything. So actually, this is just a great time to be, because the real value is being created and the real progress is being made as we speak.
Excellent. That's a good answer. Let's push a little further forward on the future. Earlier this hour, you asked about a challenge. You were asked about a challenge, and the big challenge was trying to grow edX even further, trying to reach out to people who you haven't already taught. And there were some responses to that. People said that, how can you do this? Ann Keene actually asked, how can you reach out to rural audiences? So this is a good question. Are you thinking about, for example, publishing versions of edX classes that are only accessible on flip phones, which is often used in chunks of the world? Are you looking at perhaps publishing classes through satellite TV, which is again a major point of access for people in Africa? I mean, what are you thinking about when it comes to expanding that audience?
So frankly, if you look at the growth of smartphones, if all edX did was be accessible to people with an internet connection and a smartphone, that would be billions and billions of people all over the world, and we are not even a drop in the bucket compared to that. So I think well before we begin handling the challenges of satellite phones and flip phones, frankly, the amount of time it would take us to do that, everybody around the world will be having cheap smartphones and internet connections everywhere. It's much cheaper for a government to provide internet connection to all the villages than it is to build the bricks and mortar schools. So I think that we haven't felt the need to try to teach on flip phones. Our teaching is video based, and we use a lot of simulation technology for labs and so on. And so I think we feel that being able to create quality content is important for learning outcomes, and haven't felt the need to move to flip phones or other categories.
Well, that's a really, really good answer. You're betting on that curve, that adoption curve continuing to grow with connectivity expanding and prices dropping and technology getting more and more accessible.
I mean, that's how, you just have to look at the exponential adoption curve. And far more people have access to a smartphone and an internet connection than have access to a bricks and mortar school or college. So if we satisfy the thirst from the people that had internet connectivity or a smartphone with a data plan, we'd be already close to significantly addressing the global education challenge.
So this goes back to your earlier image of the school having one classroom, and the classroom is a historical relic showing the way you used to do things in the 20th century.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, already today, I was at the EdCrunch conference in Russia, in Moscow, a couple of days ago, hosted by our partner university, Mises. It's the real leading university in Russia. And there, they had a panel where they had 3 kids, 8-year-old kids, ask questions of university leaders. And one question the kids asked was, why is it that a lecture is so boring and so outdated, and it's so much more fun for us kids to watch a blog or a YouTube video? And even 7, 8-year-old kids are into YouTube videos and bloggers and so on, and they're learning so much from people like the Green Brothers and others who are engaging, and it's on YouTube and so on. And that transformation has already happened. The trains left the station. And so why do we get these kids who are already digital natives and learning with short videos? Why is it that we bring them to college and put them in a big classroom where they're going to be bored out of their minds? And so I think, frankly, we need to get with the program because our children already have outpaced us.
So on the one hand, you're talking about the long curve of technological adoption, but you're also talking about the demographic experience of younger generations who have already immersed in this technology in different degrees and have expectations accordingly. That's quite a vision. You're talking about the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Absolutely. Frankly, the challenge edX has faced with digital learning is not how do you bring learners up to speed on how to use the platform. The challenge has been, how do you bring people like me? And I've been a professor for 30 years. How do you bring people like me up to speed in the digital world? How do you teach this old dog new tricks? How do you teach people like me how to teach online? How to get comfortable with video and short videos? I like to give 1-hour lectures. Heck, I've given 90-minute lectures. How do I punchily say things in 6-minute chunks? How do I teach online? How do I interleave videos with engaging interactive exercises? Really, I think our challenge is how do we bring some of the people like myself up to speed much more than bringing our younger generation up to speed on how to learn digitally.
So that's the real challenge. Professor Agarwal, I have a feeling we could talk for, 6 minutes, or we could talk for hours. We are out of time right now. And I just wanted to say thank you for your vision. Thank you for all the work you're doing with edX. Thank you for your time with us, answering all of our questions. You've given us quite a roadmap of the future of education. For that, we're very, very grateful.
Thank you, Brian. It was great to join you, and I hope you will all join me on edX. Look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
I think we shall. One quick question before you go. Besides going to the edX website, what's the best way to keep up with your work?
I would say you can follow me on Twitter. My hashtag is at Agarwal Edu, Agarwal Edu, and even though I'm not super experienced with Twitter, I do tweet on a more or less regular basis.
Well, we'll keep an eye on you. Thank you again, and we'll see you on Twitter. But friends, don't leave yet. We have news for the next week. So, Christopher, if you could bring up the slides for what we're up to. So first, next week, we're going to shift grounds, although not a huge difference. We're going to be speaking with Nate Otto, who's a digital badging guru. So we're going to be speaking of micro-credentials and where they're headed. So if you're interested in the stack credentials idea, modular accreditation, this is going to be the time. So on the 11th, come back for Nate Otto, talking about digital badges. Also, between now and then, our book club is now working on the vote for what book we should read next. So if you go to the very left edge of the screen, you can see in the very bottom, there's a button there, a little orange button. There's a poll to click for the next book club. So which nonfiction book should we read? The votes are already coming in thick and fast. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Now, if you'd like to get some of those books, of course, you can go to our bookstore, which is the only bookstore in the future of education in the world. And Christopher, why don't you put up the social slide with all the links? If you'd like to keep our conversation going, if you'd like to follow these ideas about where MOOCs are going, where credentials are going, how online learning works, how students are changing, and how faculty might change, we have these conversations going online. So on Twitter, you can use the hashtag FTTE. You can follow me, Brian Alexander. You can go to our groups on Slack, LinkedIn, and Facebook for further conversation. And in the meantime, thank you all for terrific questions. This was a great session. We're really grateful to you for all of your interest. Take care. We'll see you online and see you next week. Bye-bye.